The battlefield around Pokrovsk has taken on an increasingly chaotic and adaptive character, reflecting the broader evolution of the war in eastern Ukraine. In recent weeks, Russian assault tactics in the area have shifted in a way that underscores both urgency and improvisation. Small, fast-moving units advancing on motorcycles, attempting to outmaneuver Ukrainian defenses and exploit gaps before they can be sealed. This approach is not without precedent. Light, highly mobile infantry tactics have appeared in various conflicts where conventional armored advances become too costly or ineffective. Around Pokrovsk, however, the use of motorcycles highlights a specific challenge facing Russian forces navigating terrain saturated with drones, artillery, and anti-armor weapons. Large vehicles are easily spotted and targeted. Motorcycles, by contrast, offer speed, a smaller signature, and the ability to disperse quickly. Ukrainian defenders, including units from the Azov Brigade, have adapted quickly. Among them, snipers have emerged as a critical countermeasure against these fast-moving assaults. Operating in concealed positions, often supported by drone reconnaissance, they track and engage incoming riders with precision. The open nature of motorcycle assaults, lacking heavy protection, means that a single, well-placed shot can disable both the vehicle and its operator. In one particularly intense engagement, a sniper team from the brigade reportedly halted a wave of advancing riders attempting to push toward Ukrainian lines. According to battlefield accounts, the sniper methodically targeted lead elements of the assault, creating confusion and forcing those behind to scatter or retreat. Without cohesion or cover, the attacking force quickly lost momentum. This kind of engagement illustrates a broader dynamic shaping the front, a constant cycle of adaptation and counter-adaptation. As one side experiments with new tactics, whether motorcycles, drones, or electronic warfare, the other responds with equally innovative defenses. The use of motorcycles also suggests logistical and operational pressures. Compared to armored vehicles, motorcycles are easier to replace and require fewer resources to deploy. But they also indicate a willingness to trade protection for speed, and, in many cases, to accept higher casualty risks in exchange for even limited territorial gains. For Ukrainian forces, the defense of Pokrovsk remains strategically significant. The town serves as a logistical hub and a gateway to deeper positions in the Donetsk region. Holding it requires not only resilience, but constant vigilance against unconventional assaults like these. Snipers, often operating in small teams and under austere conditions, have become a quiet but decisive factor in this defense. Their role goes beyond simply eliminating targets. They disrupt timing, break formations, and impose psychological pressure on advancing troops. In an environment where seconds and meters can determine the outcome of an engagement, that disruption can be decisive. As the battle continues, the scenes around Pokrovsk reflect the grinding nature of the conflict. Innovation born of necessity, tactics tested under fire, and individuals like the sniper who halted a motorcycle assault, shaping outcomes in moments that rarely make headlines but carry lasting consequences. The war shows no signs of simplifying. Instead, it grows more complex, more improvised, and, in many ways, more personal fought, not just with machines and strategies, but with split-second decisions made by individuals on both sides of the line. Geolocated footage that shows Russian forces striking a Ukrainian position in the southern outskirts of Vovchansk. Vovchansk, a city that was a focus of the Russian ground offensive in 2024, is split between two armies and destroyed. It's located 10 kilometers to 2 miles from the state border and 50 kilometers to 31 miles from Kharkiv, the region's center city. Last week, Russian forces resumed active assaults on border settlements north of Kharkiv Oblast, changing their direction, reported the Ukrainian military. Now, Russians are trying to attack near Budarki and Zemlyanki settlements. According to ISW, Russian forces conducted limited ground attacks in the Veliki Burluk direction on April 28, but did not advance as Ukrainian forces counterattacked. South of Vovchansk, the forested area ends, and open terrain begins practically nothing but bare fields. Crossing them under current conditions would be suicidal. Previously, the Russian command had planned to launch 2 attacks converging on the Veliki Burluk area, either to close the ring or, under the threat of encirclement, to force Ukrainian armed forces units to leave the heavily fortified area. But the Russians were stopped on the left flank near Vilcha and on the right flank near Dvorochansky. That is why they decided to establish buffer zones along the border. Ratcheting up the pressure on Russian forces in southeastern Ukraine, the Ukrainian 225th Assault Regiment is flying drones into buildings and hunting for any Russian armored vehicles tucked inside. The goal: to knock out the vehicles before the Russians can deploy them for a fresh push towards Zaporizhia city, 75 kilometers to the west of the disputed gray zone threading south from Dnipropetrovsk Oblast through Zaporizhia Oblast. The vehicles the Ukrainian drones operators are finding and destroying in their indoor shelters are some of the oldest and weirdest in Russia's 50-month wider war on Ukraine. Blasting awkwardly up-armored T-55 tanks from the 1950s, the Ukrainians are discovering just how poorly equipped some of the Russian regiments and brigades in the southeast actually are. That the Russian 5th and 36th Combined Arms Armies in Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhia Oblasts ride in geriatric T-55 SLAS, among other aged vehicles, doesn't mean the CAA's part of the eastern group of forces can't advance towards Zaporizhia. It does mean they may struggle, especially given the increasing density of Ukrainian drones and other defenses in the area. A recent montage of first-person view drone strikes, circulated by the 225th Assault Regiment, depicts regimental FPV pilots deftly maneuvering through narrow gaps between the walls and roofs of sheds, garages, and warehouses somewhere in the regiment's sector, which stretches between the Ukrainian base in Verkhnya Tursa and the Russian base in Zelin, 8 kilometers to the east. A new generation of Ukrainian-made FPV attack drones has been tested by the Ministry of Defense and the Brave One Defense Technology Cluster. Ukrainian Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov spoke about the tests. Drones from 8 Ukrainian manufacturers were tested at the test site. The drones covered a range of up to 25 kilometers and were supposed to hit targets under the influence of various types of electronic warfare agents. According to the minister, some of the UAVs have fully passed the tests. Zelensky has, in recent weeks, also agreed security cooperation with Turkey and Syria, and signed agreements at the weekend with Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev on defense and energy. Zelensky is really trying hard to show that Ukraine is an asset and not a liability, and that it has an answer to the changing nature of war, said Orisia Lutsevich, head of the Ukraine Forum at Chatham House, a London-based think tank. Ukraine now needs to organize itself to actually deliver. Our task is to scale these technologies in the Army as quickly as possible and ensure accelerated delivery so that units receive effective tools immediately after confirmation of the result, said Fedorov. Testing at the test site is carried out using a separate methodology for different types of drones. According to the minister, his advisor, Serhiy Sternenko, is working on the development of new generation drones.